This happened when I was a bartender about 4 years ago, but I think about it often and it has changed the way that I operate throughout life. I now refuse to go to any store alone after midnight. For the story's sake, I will tell you that I was 25 and an attractive, slender blonde at the time. On a busy Friday night, I was bartending with the bar manager, and he had noticed that we were very low on some bar necessities after the dinner rush. Lemons, limes, bitters, that kind of thing. So I was sent out to go to a 24-hour grocery store down the road to pick up the odds and ends that we would need to get us through the weekend. I picked up everything that was asked of me without any trouble at the store, until I got to the liquor aisle. There were two country-looking guys that were probably around my age in the aisle, and they were staring at me and whispering to each other in a way that made me uncomfortable, as I assumed they were making comments about me. All pretty innocent so far. Before they could approach me, I grabbed what I needed very quickly, and I power walked to the self-checkout. I really booked it out of there because when you're a bartender, it's kind of like you are on stage, and you're required to be charming and interact with people that you otherwise absolutely wouldn't be able to tolerate unless you're getting paid to. Thus, why I'm not a bartender anymore. I get to the self-checkout and hot on my tail are the two guys. I'm scanning my stuff and they use the scanning station next to me. I get a better look at them now that they are right next to me. One is taller, muscular, and average looking. The other is shorter and more plump. They both looked dirty and their eyes were completely bloodshot. Not sure if they were high on something or had already been drinking for a while. They continued to stare at me and our eyes awkwardly met. So I did the pleasant, Midwestern-y thing to do, and flashed them a quick, insincere, closed-lipped smile to be polite. The taller one starts trying to talk to me. "Hey, it looks like you're ready to party, huh?" I replied with something like, "Yeah, something like that. It's not for me, though." They walk closer to me and ignore their responsibility to scan their items. "Oh, it must be your boyfriend, huh?" I flashed the awkward, tight-lipped smile again, and I roll my eyes slightly, like this is your hint that I'm not interested, fellas. The taller one continues to try to talk to me. "You could come hang out with us tonight. We could show you a real good time if you know what I mean." I reply with, "No thanks, I'm good, I have plans already." Well, the tall one starts to get upset that his moves aren't working like he had hoped, and starts using a more threatening tone and moves very close to me, like 2 inches away, but I ignore him, stay focused on the scanner. I don't think he had showered in a few days by the smell of him. He gets a little bit louder and says, "Oh, I see how it is. You probably only get with doctors and rich men like that. You think you're too good for us. We can show you that you aren't. We can teach you a lesson." Now, I'm not sure in what context he meant, but it definitely wasn't good. Still not looking at him, I turn away so my body is blocking his view of my purse, which I had set on the scanner. I grab my 4-inch pocket knife out and slide it up my jacket sleeve, in case I need to protect myself, acting like I'm searching for my wallet. I do this, however, in view of the self-scan worker standing at her podium, and I look at her with wide eyes, trying to communicate that I do not feel safe and that I might need help. I turn back to the machine and slide my credit card to pay, while the creepy and hostile guys are practically standing on top of me. The machine malfunctions and it starts beeping. The lady comes over immediately, and the guys standing next to me change their expressions from, "I'm planning to do this to you for a couple of days and toss your body in a creek," to just your friendly good old country boys making polite conversation over here. They actually tried to act like I knew them, and that we were friends so the worker wouldn't be alerted to their ill intentions. They tried joking with the worker, saying that I was stealing something and that's why the machine went off. The worker was definitely not buying it. She was more than 6 feet tall, with some muscle on her, by the way, I wouldn't mess with her on my best day. Anyways, she presses a few buttons on the screen, shooting the guys a very unimpressed look when they were trying to act charming, and cancels the order completely. She turns to me and says, "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am. This machine seems to not be working correctly. Why don't you gather up your things and I'll ring you up at an actual register." She puts her hand on my back and gives me a wide-eyed look, like I had given her a minute earlier, letting me know that she sees I am in danger. I pick up my things to follow her to a register that is near the security office. The guys linger around the self-scan, still glaring at me, and eventually complete their purchase, but they stand at the exit, assuming that they are waiting for me. I felt like I would be walking to my death if I made my exit in that moment. The worker keeps a close eye on the guys and scans my items. As she's scanning, she tells me there wasn't actually anything wrong with the machine that I was using. It just misread my credit card. She said, "I had a bad feeling about those guys from the moment they walked in, and then I saw them getting aggressive towards you. I already rang security to be ready to walk you out to the parking lot and make sure that you can leave safely when you're ready to leave. And then I saw you take that knife out and put it up your sleeve, getting ready to protect yourself. Good girl. As much as I would like to see you show them they picked the wrong chick to mess with, I'm glad I was able to pull you aside and make sure that you're safe. I see them waiting by the door for you. I'll just keep pressing buttons on the screen and act like I'm having trouble with your order until they give up and go outside. Our security officer and I are both still going to escort you to your vehicle when you leave, though." I thought to myself, this woman seriously deserves a raise. I thanked her over and over again and told her what they said to me, and I was getting afraid because I don't know what these guys are capable of. As I'm talking to her, my bar manager calls me to see what's taking so long. I explain what was happening, and he was obviously very concerned and ready to come up there himself and kick some butt. A sweet sentiment indeed. By the time that I hang up, the guys had given up and walked out to the parking lot. The workers said that I should give it another couple of minutes because she had a feeling they might still be in the parking lot waiting for me to walk out and see which vehicle was mine, so that they could follow me. My instant thought was, no way, they have to be gone by now. I was wrong. The worker and security guard escorted me out as it was after midnight, and you can imagine how empty the parking lot was. Towards the back of the lot, there sat an old, big pickup truck running with the lights on pointed towards the store. It was a huge parking lot, and it wouldn't have made sense for them to initially park like that. So I'm assuming they moved the truck to sit that way so they had a full view of when I exited the store to go to my vehicle. It was like being stalked by very hungry lions. When I unlocked my car and they saw that me, the worker, and the guard were looking directly at them, and that I wasn't getting in my car until we watched them leave, they then peeled out of the parking lot. I mean, they seriously did a burnout to establish that they were upset and trying to intimidate us or something. Poor creeps didn't get their way. Boo-hoo. I thanked the worker and the guard over and over again, as I am certain that they had saved my life, or at least saved me from having to live with whatever those guys were planning on doing to me. I did write a long letter to the store manager and to their corporate location describing how their employees protected me and how grateful I was. I really hope that earned her a promotion, a bonus, or a raise. She didn't know me at all and was ready to protect me, which really isn't her job, but she did it anyways. Needless to say, I do not go late night shopping by myself anymore. Never will again. I've been running in these woods for as long as I can remember, but this might make me change my mind. The story began at around 6:30 p.m. I had finished eating and decided to go on a run, as usual. I always use the same path, cross the street, run for about 1 kilometer, and pass the gate that goes into the woods, Something important to note is that the trail I use in the forest is separated about halfway through. One path is paved and the other isn't. I usually go into the unpaved path first, and then turn into the paved one after about 3 km. Nothing ever really goes wrong. I meet some rare people walking their dogs, but other than that, I'm pretty much alone. At least I thought I was. I had been running for a while when I heard a notification coming from my phone. An airdrop notification. Since I didn't want to make it look like I was worried, I kept running for a couple of minutes and then stopped to change the music. I opened the airdrop dreadfully. Who the heck was sending me stuff? Pretty sure that I was alone. I clicked on the drop and my heart sunk. It was a Snapchat picture of me running with the caption, "You look good." I didn't turn around. Instead, I kept running like nothing happened until I had reached a certain point. You see, the forest is surrounded by a fence to stop children from coming in unsupervised, and I didn't like that rule when I was little, so my friends and I would cut a hole in it. When I was aligned with that hole, I quickly turned and buried myself into the forest, aiming for my escape. I could hear ruffling behind me and I still didn't turn back. When I finally reached the hole, I jumped through it and absolutely booked it to the fire station that was a couple streets down. The last things I could hear when leaving the forest was an angry huff and metal meeting metal. I still don't know who it was or what they wanted from me, but I never ran in this forest again. Every summer with a few friends, we take a trip to the seaside of France for about a week. Last year, we decided to go to Hossegor on the southwestern coast to go surfing, but ended up in a small tourist village called Malais-et-Ma, an hour from where we were supposed to go because of a reservation mess up. The week was going okay until the last 3 days of the trip, but the story I'm going to tell you is from last night. So, the past 2 days we had been in trouble with the police and a few other tourists because of some misunderstandings over a pack of cigarettes. We had spent the last 2 nights stressing and trying to cool things off, and therefore, we thought the last night we were spent there couldn't be as bad as those 2, and it couldn't possibly be as if we were leaving the next day, very early in the morning, so we had only planned to go to a restaurant for dinner with some close friends that we had met there to celebrate the trip. The dinner was going great. We were all having fun, and as time passed by, it started getting dark. Towards the end of the meal, my best friend Dennis, who was driving us home the next day, thought it was best for him to leave early and not drink too much, so we could sleep as soon as possible and be in the best shape for the long drive that was coming. He left about 15 minutes before the rest of the group, while we stayed and drank a bit more. We paid the check, and as soon as I got up from my chair, I received a message from Dennis. "Call me. There's a guy following me." Here's what happened. Dennis had to pass through a caravan parking lot and take off to get back to the residence in which we had rented a house. While he was in the parking lot, he noticed someone behind him that was about his size, with a hood and a cap on. At first, he didn't think anything of him, as the village was actually quite touristy, and there were a lot of people usually passing by the parking lot. But when Dennis stopped to take a pee on the tree, he had a glimpse of the guy behind him stopping and hiding behind another tree a few feet back. And as soon as he got to walking again, the guy stepped out from behind the tree and started following him again up to the Gulf. As Dennis got there, he was a bit creeped out, especially since at night, the Gulf is completely dark, only lit by the moonlight and empty of people. He stopped again for a second to light a cigarette and checked if the guy was still behind him. Once again, the guy stepped out of the path and hid behind a tree until Dennis started walking again. That's when he understood that he was in danger. The guy wasn't physically imposing, and so Dennis thought that it was weird that he was so confident in following him. Maybe because he was holding a knife or a gun. Nevertheless, Dennis kept walking and acting as if he hadn't noticed anything, although the guy was following him again and sent me the message, "Call me, there's a guy following me." As soon as I had picked up, he talked loudly to try and scare off the guy by saying, "Hey, you're at the golf with the other 8. No problem, I'll be there in a minute." Even though there were only 5 of us and absolutely not at the golf, which was terrifying for me. But it was clever because it made me understand he wasn't joking and where he was. I swore to him that everything was going to be okay, that we would be there in 5 minutes, and told him to be careful and safely try to make it home. As soon as I hung up, I started running towards the golf and explained very briefly to my friend that Dennis was in trouble, and that we had to get there as soon as we could. Meanwhile, when I had hung up, Dennis put the phone back in his pocket and kept walking. He took a glance back and saw the guy was still a few meters behind him. He took a last puff of a cigarette that he had lit 2 minutes before, and then threw it and started running towards the residence. As he was running, he took a look back and saw the guy started running too. It lasted for about 5 minutes before he got in front of our house, which was empty. When he got there, he stopped for a second, looked back one last time. The guy was about 10 meters behind him, in the middle of the alley, immobile, and then went to hide behind one of the cars that were on the east side of it. As soon as Dennis saw that, he panicked and he barged into the house, locked the door with difficulty, grabbed the biggest kitchen knife he could find in the house, and he waited on the couch facing the entrance to the house, which was a glass canopy. When me and my friends got there, he was scared but unhurt. He explained everything to us, and then we went looking for the guy in a group of 4. The neighbors hadn't seen anyone other than us, and even though we got to the residence at first in separate groups at different times, and through the 2 different entrances, we didn't see anyone coming out of them. He had completely disappeared. Nothing was stolen, even though we had left clothes to dry outside of the house. And nobody was hurt, so we didn't call the police. But we warned the neighbors, and me and the 2 others stayed up all night outside to look out for the guy, as he had seen where we lived and we were afraid he would return during the night. Dennis had been lucky. We never knew what were the intentions of this guy, or if he was hiding something that gave him the advantage over my friend. Furthermore, he didn't even try to get into the house, and it's good for Dennis because there was another entrance to the house, another glass canopy that led to one of our friends' room, and which at the time had not been correctly closed. We couldn't even understand what he did. If he wanted to steal from Dennis or attack him, he could have done it 2 separate times, when he went to the bathroom and when he lit a cigarette, but he didn't. So what did he want? Who was he and where did he go? I don't think we'll ever get an answer. We can only hope he never did anything to anyone and he was arrested if he did. We didn't call the cops back then because we had had trouble with them the past 2 days because of the problem with the pack of cigarettes I mentioned before. Also, after those 3 days that had gone wrong, we just wanted it to end, to go home and sleep. I regret not calling them now that I think about it, but it's too late now, and I hope this guy hasn't been creeping on anybody since. We were all absolutely tired the next day, and the drive that was supposed to be about 5 or 6 hours took 10 hours to complete under the heavy summer heat. Hey, but we all got home safely. We slept well, and never had any problems of that sort since, and now we can all laugh about it. And to conclude, I would advise you to never walk alone at night in places that you don't know much about. There are crazy and weird people everywhere, and a calm night can quickly turn to a nightmare if you don't watch out. To really understand the story, or maybe how it happened, you need to know a few things. I live in Belgium, and at the time of the events, around 2018, I lived at home with my parents, siblings, an older brother and sister, and my sweet dog. Looking back now, maybe my dog is a bit too sweet. Also important to note is that my family is all over the place. Everybody is always busy doing something. Everyone has a very different rhythm, and some days we live next to each other instead of with each other. So that is why at the time I didn't really know who was home and who wasn't. But we do love each other. So in 2018, on a school night, I woke up to some noises in my room. I was confused and I looked at my phone. It was around 3 a.m. You know that feeling when you wake up very abruptly and don't know if you're dreaming or awake? That was kind of how I felt. There's a street light right at my window, so even though the curtains were closed, I could still make out some silhouettes and figures. As I just woke up and wasn't really thinking, I thought the silhouette that I saw in my room was my older brother. I was sleep drunk, as you could call it, and started asking him what he was doing, but he didn't really react. I saw him walking towards my jewelry, and I asked him again what he was doing. Again, my brother didn't respond. I was still laying in bed and I began to feel angry because I had school the next day and I had to get up early. And as you do with irritating siblings, I started to yell at him. "Dude, get the F out, I have school tomorrow." This time he looked at me, but he didn't say anything. He started to walk toward my handbag and started looking in it and taking things out. At this point, I was just angry at my brother and finally got out of bed. Mind you, the lights are still off. I walked towards him and asked him again, "What the F are you doing? Get out." And I physically started pushing him slightly towards the door. Then he spoke. "Where's the money? Where's the money?" In like this very strange, almost fake accent. And seriously, I started laughing it off. I still thought that it was my brother. "Okay, I don't know if you're drunk or just being an a-hole, but get out." But this time, we were almost at the door, and I was still pushing him out, and he left and I closed the door. Finally, I thought as I went back to bed, but I started feeling unsettled. I got nervous and scared and started thinking it over. Did I smell cigarettes? My brother doesn't smoke, and why would he act so strange? So just to be sure, I texted my brother, "Where are you?" His answer made my heart sink to my knees. "I just left the gym. I'll be home in a minute." I immediately called him and frantically explained there was just someone in my room. I started crying as I was panicked and asking him what to do. He said to call the police and to stay in my room. As the gym was really close to our home, my brother came home like literally a minute or two later. I was still upstairs on the phone with the police while I heard my brother yell a whole lot of curse words and "get out." At that point, I was in the upstairs hallway because my sister woke up and was standing there too. My father had fallen asleep downstairs in the couch, so when he heard my brother scream, he immediately woke up and knew something was wrong. He went to the downstairs hallway and saw my brother chasing the intruder. At this point, they were already at the front door. My brother managed to take a backpack from the intruder, but sadly, he got away and fled. My brother did get a good look at him though. So the police came and I was actually in shock. All this time, my mother was asleep because she's on strong sleeping meds. She woke up during the chase when my sister and I were standing in the hallway. I was crying and she came up to us. I frantically told her what had happened and she said, "Ah, little one, that was a very bad dream." That's one of the things we still laugh about today. While we were talking to the police, we had to describe the person. I told them exactly what had happened and how he looked. Due to the streetlight, I could see the clothes that he was wearing. He had a hood on, so I didn't see his face, and when I was close, he always turned his back toward me. And so I'm telling the police lady about his black pants and green hoodie, and then she abruptly stopped me. "Green? Your brother said light gray." That's the second time my heart dropped to my knees. There were two guys, not one. Both my brother and I were 100% sure about what we saw, so there had to have been two guys. They took a few iPads, phones, and wallets, but luckily, my brother took the backpack where there was a lot more valuable things that they didn't get away with. But the burglars were kind of stupid because we still had Find My on all our Apple devices, and they were still running. A day later, when we saw the location, my brother jumped in his car with my father while on the phone with the police. Really, my brother is pretty awesome. Going to the gym at night, and he's in the military, chasing intruders through the house. I wouldn't mess with him. They waited for the police, and they went in the house where the location of our devices were, and found one guy. He was crying and covered in his own stuff. They arrested him, and he confessed. He said that he was high on drugs, and it was the first time he ever did something like that. He was very panicky and crying the whole time. My brother recognized him as the intruder that he had chased, so that meant the guy who was in my room was still out there. The guy eventually snitched on the other guy, but he was nowhere to be found. We all kind of got on with our lives, but I was really scarred. I slept with the lights on for more than a year, and every time I would wake up past 3 a.m., I wouldn't be able to go to sleep anymore. The intruder that they caught went to jail for a year. It was his first time. Ed is now in a rehab program. He has sent us a letter or two with our consent, and we kind of feel bad for him. He was traumatized too. But half a year ago, we heard that the second man was taken into custody. I was finally over it. I mean, it wasn't as bad as the beginning, but of course, I still got scared sometimes. But now they finally caught the man that was in my room. What we found out was unsettling by the least. While the dude that we found first didn't have a record before this happened, the dude who was in my room was a very, very experienced criminal. He had multiple possession charges, theft, drunk driving, and worst of all, assault and attempted homicide. The man that I talked to, cursed out and pushed out of my room at 3 a.m., was dangerous, and I'm very happy to be alive. So this happened about 13 years ago. I was 10 at the time and my brother was 8. We had just moved to a new town that year, and the Walmart here had this sweet arcade up near the service desk. So every time my parents would bring us grocery shopping, they would give us a few dollars and let us play in the arcade. The town had an incredibly low crime rate, and the arcade is at the front of the store where dozens of people are checking out. So what could possibly go wrong? My brother is playing the claw machine, while I'm standing on the side of the machine, trying to help him angle the claw perfectly above a stuffed animal that he's trying to get. Suddenly, this random hillbilly walks up to the claw machine next to us, inserts a quarter and begins moving the claw around. But for most of this time, he's making eye contact with my brother and smiling, not even watching the game. He's not talking to us, just staring and smiling. He has long, thin brown and silver hair, pulled back into a loose ponytail at the base of his skull, a camo trucker hat, and a long, scraggly beard. I remember vividly the way that he smelled. Stale beer, ashtray, and something that smelled like a sweet yet sour dirt, or a fungus. He tries making small talk with my brother and I, who were raised to be aware of strangers but to still be polite. Eventually, we get bored of the game we're playing and I usher my brother to follow me to a new game, all the way on the opposite side of the arcade. A few seconds later, the man follows us, stationing himself once again at the claw machine next to us. At some point, an overweight lady walks in and says to the hillbilly, "What are you doing to these little kids?" and snickers at me. He replies, "I'm trying to win them some stuffed animals." She then begins playing the claw on the other side of us, so that my brother and I are sandwiched between these two strange hillbillies. His comment comes across as weird to me, because previously I thought he was maybe trying to win something for his kids, but this entire time, he's just been following my brother and I from game to game, trying to win us toys. This has been going on for maybe 20 minutes at this point. They've followed us to several different machines and spent a lot of money. The games were all 25 cents per play. Each time, my brother and I switched machines, they would follow us. The hillbilly says to the lady, "I'm out of money, you got any?" She says, "Nah, I'm broke too." My brother says, "I have $1 still." Now, this is the part that really scared me. I remember listening to these two talk about some weird things with us, asking if I have a boyfriend, asking where we go to school, where our parents work, asking if we've ever done drugs. But when my brother said that he had $1, she responded with the most terrifying thing I'd heard from them yet. The woman suddenly burst out, "Oh crap, then give it to me, boy." Her face was red. The tone in which she shouted was so ear-piercing and gut-wrenching that I could feel the blood drain from my face. My brother looked like he was about to cry. He hands her the $1 and her face lights up. She laughs it off, almost like she's trying to make it seem like she was joking when she had yelled at us. My father walks up a couple of minutes later. As I turn to tell him that these people have spent close to $15 to win toys for us, they leave hurriedly before he gets a good look at them. My dad is livid. He takes us up to the front desk and tells them what I told them. They make an announcement on the intercom to keep an eye out for these people, and to report to an employee if they see them. And then they call the police. I don't actually remember this part, or much of anything after my father arrives, but this is what he told me. They never did find the couple, and the police reviewed security cameras. They were too blurry to make out any physical description, and told my parents that the couple left the store immediately after my father showed up, without any groceries. Every time that I see a man or a woman in Walmart that looks as I remember them, I get anxiety and try to avoid them. Early last year, I had a strange encounter that you all might find interesting. So, a quick tidbit about myself. I help people as often as I can, including giving money to homeless people, or giving rides to hitchhikers if we're going the same way. 98% of the time, the worst I've encountered is awkward conversations, and being asked if I have drugs to sell. No matter what though, I don't mess with people at night, or in groups, and I keep weaponry on hand though. I've never needed to show it. This is not one of those times. I lived in a lower income area of my city, and only about a half a mile from the local homeless shelter. So I've seen plenty of people in a sad state during the 2 years that I've lived here. My apartment building kind of sat in a little valley with a little ravine across the street that deer often hung out in. They let our bus shelter on really rainy days. I lived on the 3rd floor. So one day, I come home. It's blowing snow at around 15 degrees out. In my entryway is a dude sitting on the staircase. It was obvious that he was homeless and looking for a place to warm up, as he was wearing 4 days worth of clothing at once, and had 2 backpacks with him. Not a big deal as long as he's not there when the building is locked up for the day. Our security consisted of having locks set for a 9 to 5 office hour. As I pass him on the staircase, I give him a smile as I do to literally every other stranger, not screaming at me on the planet. He stops me and he tries to talk to me. Now it's obvious that he doesn't speak very good English, but I was able to discern that he was asking for water, and that he was waiting for a friend who lived in the building to come home. Yeah, no problem. I head up to my apartment to get water for him, and he follows me. This was a bit uncomfortable, but I was already having a hard time communicating with him, so I let it slide. And this is where things go wonky. My apartment was an efficiency where the bathroom was right inside the front door, and then a tiny hallway into, well, everything else. I walked to the kitchen to get the water, and he points at the bathroom. Yeah, sure, dude. I have cleaning supplies. That's what they're there for. And so I go around the corner, pull out a couple of bottles of water from the fridge and come back. And he's standing there, buck naked in my hallway. And then it dawns on me. Water. He was asking for a shower. Oh God. And then he tries to ask me to join him. No, that's a hard pass. You understand, no. He goes into the shower and I pace in my living room trying to figure out how the frack I can communicate to him that he needs to leave. Cause things went from uncomfortable to creeptastic in 0.6 seconds. And then it got worse. He comes out again, buck naked, without a towel, and begins wandering around my apartment, commenting on everything. And his you-know-what is a little excited too. Did I mention that part? Yeah, I lose it. Politely, because once you're in retail, that never goes away. And I try to get him to put clothes on. He doesn't understand me. I pull out my phone, pull up Google Translate, and show him the list of languages. He understood what I was asking and he selected Somalian. Goody, that's some progress. Now that the things he's commenting on, in terrible half English, is, you live alone. Does this TV work? Nope. Done. I typed into Google Translate, asking if he needed to call his friend or call the apartment management. He gives me a thumbs up and then climbs into my loft bed. I guess I'm cleaning that too now. So I'm like, which one? Another thumbs up. Okay, so he either didn't get what I was trying to do with the app after all, or he can't read. Eventually, my lizard brain took a breather from panicking long enough for the logic part of my brain to take over, and I went to where his clothes were and pointed at them and then at the door. He got dressed and left. Simple, done, over. I shake for about 2 hours, drink a 6-pack, and post what happened to Facebook. In that time, it dawns on me that I probably just got staked for theft. So I spend another hour double and triple checking my security camera, which I originally got to check on the puppy that I was training at the time, for later. Guess what? The next day, he was back on the stairs again. I tried to be pleasant, but made it very clear with head shakes and a roundabout trip back down the stairs, and back up the other flight on the other side of the building to my apartment, that I wasn't going to help him again, or be his buddy. 2 days after that, he was there again. I told the landlady, and she had him removed, and I never saw him again. And before you ask, no, nothing was stolen. I moved to the exact opposite end of the city 4 months ago. Things have been going well since then.